welcome to the Just a Millisecond podcast where I speak openly with transparency and vulnerable honesty about things that don't fit into the practical bubble of my everyday world. As the phrase from Hamilton, can I be real a second for just a millisecond? That's what's about to happen. As I learned, it's wise to tell people trigger warnings. So, going to be talking about cancer. I'm going to be talking about death, emotions, and anxiety, and panic attacks, depression, and all the other marshmallows that make up Lucky Charms. So, if this is not what you're here for, you might not want to be here, and just go to the pull list or wait till I do a Bible study on Avatar or Howl's Moving Castle. But those are coming. But here we go. This is the Just a Millisecond podcast, Cancer, Part 1. I have not talked a lot about cancer. Oh boy. This is gonna suck. I've not talked a lot about cancer. Because it's kind of crippled me on my emotional processing for the better part of I can't tell you the exact timeline, but at least the last 7 or 8 months. I'll say, direct interaction with cancer started, that distance ago. My aunt, Carmen, who is the closest thing to a sister that I have. My dad's little sister, she is 8 years older than my dad. So she really is more like my big sister. And we used to be neighbors. We have daughters the same age. And she was the closest geographically and relationally that I have on terms of family. And we have not been as close over the last while as I would have wanted. Like I said, we were neighbors and she moved. And it's hard not to take that kind of stuff personally, or to feel like it's because of you or whatever else. But it made me sad regardless. But once my aunt moved, she hadn't been to our house in a long while. And out of nowhere, she kind of just came over and wanted to visit and let our kids hang out. And it felt really awesome. But it also felt kind of suspect. And then I guess that would have been March of 2020, somewhere in there. And whenever I did Front Lawn Con, I'd have to look back at the actual timeline of life. But whenever I did Front Lawn Con, I was sitting in my front yard when my aunt called me to tell me that she had breast cancer. Danielle and I were sitting in my front yard under a tent beside a whole bunch of booth and nerdy stuff. There was comic book illustrators and Funko Pop vendors in my front yard, and random people running up to buy Sonic the Hedgehog from my friend John. And I mean, it was just this weird moment where I guess she needed to tell us then. And the minute she told me, part of me just kind of shut down. I don't have a lot of family that's actual blood. I do, but I don't. My mother's side of the family in a lot of ways, kind of disappeared when my mom died, which was about a decade ago. And yeah, I've got like 40 cousins and all these other things, but we don't interact. And I don't feel really welcome. And, you know, my wife's family, up until recently, hasn't been very welcoming in those regards. And recently, we discovered a whole line of biological family on my wife's side, and they've been really cool. But I've only known them for like a year. But my aunt having cancer, I just didn't even know how to respond. She's my closest relative. And after losing my mom and after losing my dad, she was the one person I just really enjoyed the consistency of actually having family. Not even family that you love all the time or like all the time, because I know I'm an annoying nephew and we don't always see eye to eye, but it was really just hard hearing that she had cancer. And she's tough and she's feisty. And honestly, if anybody's gonna tackle it, I thought she'll tackle it. But I didn't like how it made me feel. Not that it's about me. But hearing my aunt had cancer was like being a kid at a table when your parents are fighting. You just want to hide. You want to pretend nothing's wrong. You don't want to be involved. You don't even want to look, because if you look, you're involved. And it just made me feel just really helpless. I know I can pray, and I prayed. But there was just something about my older family member that I looked to having cancer that just hit the same nerve as losing a parent. And my wife and my aunt have a much better relationship as far as communication than we do. And I allowed that season to pass in our lives where she did the primary communication or the visits or the drop-offs or whatever else, because I was scared to even see it. I was scared to I didn't want to look losing another person I loved in the face. If that makes any sense. I eventually kind of owned up, stopped being a coward about it, and started visiting a little bit more and checked on her. And when she started her chemo and lost her hair, she sent me a photo and said, "Look, I look just like you." And she legit did. I sent her a message back that, I was going to get her a crochet beard so she could really look like me. Maybe a Velcro mohawk. But my aunt has not had the smoothest road in life. And I didn't want that for her. Not that you want it for anybody, but I didn't want it for her. Sorry for the snot sounds. You knew what kind of podcast this was. I don't know what you're thinking if you think you're not going to hear me blubber. I didn't want that for her. And so in the process of me just trying to be a better nephew, to be a better brother, to be a better family in this process. The other shoe dropped. My aunt was finishing up her chemo. Her last date was supposed to be around the 10th of December. That I'm looking it up right now because she actually just sent me a picture of it earlier. Her original chemo date was supposed to be around December. I'm pulling this up. I don't want to say the wrong date. Her original chemo date was her final one was December 3rd, 2020. And like she even has a t-shirt that says last chemo is today, and it says December 3rd, 2020. And so around December, we thought, you know what, great. You know, we're past this. She can start this healing process. Started trying to get more comfortable and confident in just how I loved her and how I ministered to her. And, you know, it would be her thing that I'd go visit her to check up on her chemo, and she'd talk about how she couldn't listen to a pastor with a mohawk. I mean, that's where we were at. And I was okay with that. And then my wife turned 40 on December 5th. And somewhere in that time frame, she had her obligatory mammogram. And like literally we were, she had gotten her mammogram, and I don't remember the whole chain of events. It's not been long, but it's been a lot. And, we were in Fayetteville, and, I think we're going to actually take something to my aunt. Maybe it was for my grandmother or whatever it was, but we were literally heading to my aunt's house when we got the phone call that her mammogram showed something and that she needed to go in for a biopsy. And so I believe on, if I'm remembering dates right, December 30th, we something fell. December 30th, we went in, and you know, I wasn't allowed in, so I sat in the parking lot reading comic books, playing video games, and just trying to be supportive and texting her as she went. And in that process, they said that I could go up there and sit, and that they're going to do this biopsy. And before we even got the biopsy or anything else, the lady who did the biopsy, someone in the nurse in that office said to her, "You need to go ahead and understand this, that you're here because this is cancer." She hadn't even done the biopsy yet. She's like, "You wouldn't be here if this wasn't cancer, and you need to go ahead and wrap your mind around that." And it was straight up the whole ripping the Band-Aid off. So I sat with my wife as she was physically wounded and hurting and broken and crying. I sat with her in the parking lot. As she processed this, and, you know, we were hoping, you know, maybe the biopsy actual results will come back different or whatever else. But I just sat there, and at no point this time have I been mad at God. So let's go ahead and just drop that nugget there. Jot that down. I've not been mad at God. But there's that feeling, and forgive the ridiculous analogy, But it's like being a Panthers fan or a Cowboys fan or a fan of some of DC extended universe movies. I mean, it's that thing of when you are part of something that has great potential, but you know that if something bad can happen, it probably will. And my wife has had such a long road of medical problems. And from polycystic ovaries to being told we would never be able to have children, to fibromyalgia, to ruptured discs, to constant OBGYN related issues that I'll just leave out for, discretion. She's had so much wrong and she's lived in so much pain for so long. She hurts so badly so often. And so just hearing that she had cancer was just part of me just really felt like legit, hasn't there been enough? I mean, there's this feeling of like, okay, there's enough here. We don't need this. We've been through enough. She's been through enough. Not even we. She's been through enough. And I wasn't mad at God. But I did kind of quiet down. And when I say that, I don't mean that I was giving God the silent treatment. It's my reaction to being hurt. It's my reaction to depression. It's my reaction to so much is that I just kind of shut down and go into a little ball. We found this out December 30th. And we legit basically had to wait for the whole month of January to not say anything. So when people are asking me how I'm doing, because at that point in time we were also going through a lot of work changes and COVID stuff and school stuff, and there was stuff going on all over the place. And meanwhile, I'm just sitting there numb. Because I can't disclose this until she's ready and it's the right time, and until we have answers. We didn't want to actually tell people what was happening until we knew what was going on. And the first people we told were the kids. And once we knew a confirmation that it was real, I think it took like a week, maybe two, to know that it was real. Once we knew that it was real and we got the confirmation, we brought all the kids into the bedroom. Danielle sat down in the bed and all the kids huddled up around her and they had this worried look, obviously. And I told them, Mom has cancer. And, they've literally stood back and watched as my aunt had cancer. Their aunt. My aunt's only 8 years older than me, so she's like a sister, but to them, that's their big grown up relative. That's their cousin's mom. That's the next in line to mom and dad relative. So they watched in sadness and depression as their aunt had breast cancer. And for that just to sink in and just watch my daughters just kind of collapse on their mom, and you could tell Carmen knew something was wrong, but it didn't hit her with the weight of everybody else. But you could tell she also felt awkward because she didn't know to feel as sad as she saw Rosa, because Rosa fell apart. But Carmen knew she was supposed to feel bad and had to just talk her through it. Not that she needed to feel bad on a certain level, but we just knew that she didn't understand. So we told them, we just let it marinate. We let them be sad for a moment. So after we let that fully bake in their emotions and in their minds, we just kind of hunkered together as a family and we started preparing for what was coming. We told them, we're not telling everybody, and slowly but surely we started working our way through telling our co-workers. And we at our church, we always start the beginning of the year with 21 days of fasting and prayer. And whatever day we got the confirmation was the day that we had to meet with our staff and talk about what our focus was going to be for prayer and fasting. And I went into that meeting, I'm going to pray for this. I'm going to pray for our student ministry. I'm going to pray for this. I'm going to focus on, self-control and discipline and holiness or whatever else. And we got that confirmation and I was like, well, here's what I'm praying for. And, literally watched the air get sucked out of the room. And the people that I work with just start crying. And they prayed for me. And then I just had to keep going. I had to finish that meeting. Had to plan the next thing. And, just all I wanted to do was collapse. I just wanted to hide. I wanted to be numb. Just had to keep going. I'm dealing with everything else. Because not everybody knows. And I'm just carrying on. And then my wife had to tell her employers, and then we started, slowly trickling down people it would directly affect, and specific friends and family we didn't want to find out via the internet. And she told her dad, and I felt so bad for him. She's only known her dad for like a year and a half, and he's already lost an adult child. And I know that scares him to death. And as we were telling her dad, my wife, with the spiritual testicular fortitude that she has, said, what if this is what brings my dad to Christ? Freaking gangster. She literally, in the middle of all of that, was like, what if this is what brings my dad to Christ? And then we told my aunt. And now my aunt and my wife have another bonding thing. They literally, without knowing it, delivered children on the same day, within the same hour. When my oldest daughter was born, February 12th, 2008, when she was born, you know, got her out, counted her toes, did all that. And we called my grandma in Puerto Rico to tell her, hey, grandma, you have your first ever great grandchild. And literally that same hour, my aunt had given birth to my niece or cousin, legally, whatever. But like they got to grow up together. Like my wife and aunt got to, have the whole we have new children together discussions, and they shared that, and they went through flooding and hurricanes together and all the girly things. And then they had this to bond over, texting and chatting and offering advice and questions and all that. And somewhere in there, we had a meeting where we had to go talk to the surgeons one time, and there's a lot of basic information. Then we went back, and in this process, before we even found the breast cancer, my wife had appointments scheduled to have her uterus checked out because there's a lot going wrong in her uterus region. And not bitter per se. I do have some frustration towards them as a functioning business. I'll leave their name out. But they canceled my wife's appointments for almost 3 months. And I hate to think that this is further advanced because they suck professionally. I don't want to think that. I don't want to carry that bitterness. But I hate to think that. But they went in to do a biopsy. After we found out about the breast cancer, they went on to do a biopsy on my wife's uterus and whatever is going on. And I am not the best one to map out what, like that stuff at all. I'm just north of Dwight Schrute here. But something was dramatically wrong in that region, and they couldn't even get a functional biopsy. So there is the thought and the understanding this is also possibly cancer. And the type of breast cancer that she has is hormonally based, so there is a good chance that the stuff going on in her uterus is actually what escalated or caused the breast cancer. So we went to go talk to the surgeons. And again, can't go in. So sitting there early morning, drinking coffee, reading comics, listening to music, praying, doing all the things, making stupid TikToks. And she starts calling me or messaging me back and forth because at this point in time, they're giving her the details of if they do a lumpectomy, which is taking out a chunk, there's a 40% chance the cancer comes back. If they do a single mastectomy, there's a 20% chance it comes back in the other breast. And because of what's going on with her uterus, there's a good chance that if they did a single mastectomy, there's that T in there that doesn't belong. But there's a chance if they did a single mastectomy that what's going on in her uterus would cause the other breast to go into hyperdrive with producing the hormones that cause cancer. So in the 6 weeks of recovery time between the mastectomy and the time they can get to the uterus, it could cause other things. So I'm literally having to sit there and text my wife or call my wife when she's a couple walls away making decisions that are going to change the rest of her life, and trying to keep her emotionally intact, and trying to make her feel like her life isn't falling apart, trying to make her feel like she's not going to be less of a woman, trying to make her feel like she's still going to be loved or valued. I'm sitting there in the parking lot trying so hard to love her well on the other freaking side of the wall. And she wants my opinion to say, do we do this or do we that? And I can't even grasp that reality. I know the answer is whatever is best for you. That's the answer. Whatever keeps you here, whatever's best for you, whatever's best for the kids. I was like, don't worry about the rest. And after a really long day, because we went straight from point A to point B, and after a really long day, like it was dark when she got out. She's talking through all of this, and I'm heading down the interstate on I-95, and I have now on my stress level for a long while I had an eye twitch, sometimes even a double eye twitch, and I could tell my stress level produces an eye twitch. And so when my eye starts twitching, I legit know, oh crap, I need to handle this, I need to breathe, I need to Sabbath, I need to whatever. But my eye twitch is like, okay, dude, chill out or get away from whatever's causing this. So having an eye twitch about this was not surprising. But somewhere heading down I-95, heading home from this doctor's appointment, where we're deciding about the fate of her body and her future and her image and her fears and her insecurities, we started talking about the roadmap of the surgeries that the first surgery would happen, and it was supposed to happen at the end of February. Then that would come with a 6-week recovery time, and then they would do them. Then they would do the hysterectomy, and after that they'd be able to tell if there was cancer in her uterus or if there was endometriosis or whatever else was going on. And then at that point, they would be able to see if chemo was needed, and then there would come reconstruction if that was going to happen, and that would also have recovery time. And so we sat there and added up all the weeks. And when it came to my full understanding that this is what our life was going to look like, and not because I was worried about it being inconvenienced, because 2020 already showed me that the world can shut down and we still go on. I wasn't worried about being inconvenienced, wasn't worried about how my life was going to look different. But the reality that she was going to be in this constant flux of pain and anguish and suffering for the better part of 6 months, it just pushed me over the edge. And I had my first ever full-blown panic attack, where like my vision narrowed and my chest got tight, and I was driving like 70 miles an hour, and I literally just kind of gripped my chest, and she thought I was having a heart attack because we didn't have enough problems. And I just had a panic attack, just processing what reality of our life looked like. Because this is the super honest podcast, I don't remember where I was at because I had to go blow my nose. But as we were traveling down 95 and I had a panic attack, I literally just shut down mentally and emotionally and everything else. And I told my church staff this as well as Danielle, that this was the time we were supposed to spend like 21 days praying about the things that are biggest on our hearts and whatever else. And I didn't pray out loud about this at all. Because every time I came before God about this, I just sat there and hurt. I just sat there and the pain washed over me. And I just quietly existed. But it was also on that same drive before the panic attack, maybe after, somewhere in there, that I started trying to cheer her up or lift her spirits, making the jokes about Baking Bad, about making a Breaking Bad themed cooking show on YouTube or Facebook, and like literally talking about how we could paint the kitchen walls and the different scenes we could do, and we could do some pollos hermanos one day, and blue cupcakes with sprinkles. And I mean, we literally talked about this whole thing because I love a pun, and I will make a theatricality out of anything because I'm a dramatic person. So after long discussion, we landed on that the best thing to do would be a double mastectomy. And we were good most days. We were solid in most things. But then literally a wave would hit her and she would just double over crying. And we did our best in those days to be a little extra with grace and a little extra with compassion and with humor and milkshakes or whatever else. Just on a side note, air quotes, you're not supposed to tell people about what you do when you fast while it's going on, I guess. But for that 21 days, my family does Daniel fast. For me, I intermittent fast and Daniel fast, just where I'm at in life right now. But my whole family did Daniel fast. And so it really sucked to get a cancer diagnosis when you're only eating vegetables. I'm going to just throw that out there. That sucks wind. And we both, she was so good about it. She never said a word. And we were driving and I'm like, this is garbage. I know we were trying to get closer to God, but man, I would freaking love some cheesecake right now, or I would love this, or I would love that. And she's like, oh man, me too. I didn't want to say anything. But I don't recommend finding out horrible life-changing news when you are only eating vegetables, unless you're trying to get vegan powers. But we decided on the double mastectomy and to move forward with that, and we had our last set of meetings on everything, and just started moving forward with everything. And we knew that we didn't have it within our capacity to have this conversation with everybody a lot. Because I haven't been able to really talk to people about this. And I'm not avoiding it. But when there's situations where the only thing you can do is to keep going and keep encouraging. When people ask me how I'm doing, I'm like, I literally have no idea. I just don't. So last weekend, we knew that on Tuesday this was all happening. So we had to tell everybody. Just because we live too public of lives and are involved in too much not to. And so, you know, she wanted me to make a video, or I wanted to make a video, because that was the best way to deliver this. And being me, I'm like, well, we got to do some stupid stuff in here too to break the pain of it. And so like, we got to do the Breaking Bad thing. We got Baking Bad. We got to do it. And I was like, I kept reminding her all week. I'm like, hey, don't forget, you got to bring home a yellow thing, and you got to bring home your hazmat mask, and and it was just the stupidest thing to be able to say, hey, do this, don't forget, that's important. Like, that was not even remotely important, but we needed to do it. And so we made the video, and we put it out there. And on a very lighthearted side, I'm a little sad that people didn't feel comfortable talking about how cool the Baking Bad thing was, because, the cancer. But that was seriously the best way we could do it. And the next day I saw one of my wife's students at the post office, and she said, watch that video. And the one thing that really stood out to her, because my wife said, because laughter is better than tears. Laughing is better than crying. And that's the best we can do right now. We had to go on through the weekend. It was our church's 10th anniversary birthday thing. And so we were at this big celebration. There's streamers and party stuff and all these other things. And the Super Bowl, we're carrying on like everything's cool. And in reality, it's just like the world's falling apart. And my wife had all these things she wanted to get done before this started. Like, she wanted new bed sheets, and she wanted pajamas that she could button and close, and without sliding over. And I bought her it's been a rule since before we got married that there were never TVs allowed in the bedroom, because she didn't want to be one of those families that distracted themselves from each other or from being present with a TV. But she made that rule before smartphones existed. So, I should probably not mention that. But we've never had a TV in our bedroom. And so I was like, look, dude, if you're going to be incapacitated on a regular basis for weeks at a time, I'm putting a TV in the bedroom for you. And we bought a Wi-Fi booster so it would reach better to the back of our house. And I'm just trying to do my best. And like, when her TV came in the mail, it straight up had like a forklift hole through it. So, that's fun. But we got 800 count sheets, which is probably the best sheets we've had. We've never spent money on sheets like that. And our church outdid themselves putting a meal train together. Like, I am not kidding. They have meals for us every dinner from till the end of March. And her friend Adrian also got her friends to put together like gift cards for the other meals. So like, we're provided for in that ways. And realistically, we not once looked at what this is going to cost or what this is going to actually do financially. I know that the first surgery after insurance is $5,000, but I don't know about hospital stays or anything like that. But that's never been the important thing. So Tuesday morning, went and just dropped her off on the side of the curb at the hospital. COVID's wrecked a lot of things for a lot of people. I'm fully aware. It's killed numbers at churches and killed cons and jacked up my kids' school life and everything else. But if I have to say one thing that it's personally hurt the most, was just dropping my wife off for one of the most major things in her life and not even being allowed to go in the building. She was so scared of going into this by herself, and she was so scared of waking up in that hospital room by herself. And I hated that that's reality. I hated that that's what she's looking at. As it stands, it is currently Thursday morning, 1 a.m., so Wednesday night, Thursday morning. My wife has been at the hospital since 6:30 a.m. or 6 a.m. on Tuesday. One of our pastors, Sam, is our friend. He came over to pray for us. And, he needed to be extra precautious at that point, so he literally knelt down on our front porch at 5:30 in the morning in the cold with our screen door open and prayed for us. And I'll just say this, I'd said I'd been just quiet before God. Well, Sunday morning, our church was doing this thing where we were saying, put your yes on the line, where people are literally just saying yes, that I'm committing to follow you, God, and to be part of the church and to do these things. And my wife was doing hers, and she wanted us to pray together with our pastors. And I was like, well, do you want to go pray at the altar with me? And we took our little cart up to the altar. Our worship team was playing. Service is closing. I'm minding the time because I've got to run up on stage in like 40 seconds. And we laid our card down and we knelt down together. And I started praying. And I made it like 4 words into it. And I just started bawling. I just started crying so bad. And I'm supposed to be praying for her, and I just started crying to the point that she had to pray because I couldn't talk. And I'm fully aware that God understands our spirits groaning and hurts, and He knows our heart. I'm on that. I'm on that point. I couldn't even say the words. I couldn't even say it. Now she's been in the hospital for 2 days, and she was supposed to come home today, but the pain medicine they've got her on, they gave her morphine, and it caused an asthma attack. So they're trying to get her medication right, her pain medication right, so that she can come home. So I guess all of this is really just leading up to what we're going to be going through and dealing with. And like I said, I'm not mad at God. I don't blame Him. I know there's genetics involved. I know there's human choices involved. I know that I got all these things. And I know that God wants us to consider it pure joy when we face trials of many kinds. I'm aware. Pure joy sucks sometimes, though, at the beginning of it, and the middle, and probably the end as well. That's where I'm at. Waiting on my wife to come home. Waiting to get that phone call that I can come pick her up. And I know that the next 6 months are going to be long and they're going to be hard. And there's so much going on outside of this. I don't know who's going to take the time to listen to all this either. But this is my podcast. I can do what I want. I will say this though, and I made a post today about it with Tribbles from Star Trek, that as my friends and church and community and everybody else, I've seen more support in this season, just in the last week, than ever in anything. Like, if I'm not mistaken, the post with our video and just the announcement that she's okay after surgery and stuff like that had more traction socially. I do social media for my church and my books and stuff like that, so I pay attention to those things. Not that they're what's important, but I can't help but notice them. It's just like people that actually can tell what clothes match. You see that. I don't have that problem. But just seeing the ridiculous amount of support for that has been just mind-blowing. So for y'all that have been encouraging and been supporting and that have, given to our family or donated food or any of these things, y'all are phenomenal. And thank you. I don't think any of the people in my actual life listen to my podcast, so y'all nerds that love me, I'm with you. But it's where we are. I have to learn to actually lean on God in this and to not hide what I'm feeling, but also not let it crush me. I hold it together for most things, and I'm honest when people, if they ask me if I'm okay, I'm like, no. Not that it's the most recommendable movie in this scenario, but Pulp Fiction, after Ving Rhames has been, air quotes, assaulted, Bruce Willis asks him, "You okay?" He says, "Nah, man, I'm pretty explicative far from okay." And if I was in another set of social standards and guidelines, I would probably say that on a regular basis, because that's how it feels. But that's the thing. You don't have to feel okay for things to be okay, and you don't have to feel good for God to be good, or you don't have to feel like things are in control for God to actually have a handle on what you're going through. I haven't said much about this because it's just hard to... one of the things I've felt the most is that it's hard for me to let my guard down or stop being strong when there are people around me depending on me to be strong. And it's not that they need that, but when I've got 3 little girls looking at me to be in one piece, it's hard. When my wife is falling apart emotionally and physically, she needs to know that not only am I going to be here, but that I'm going to not find her disgusting. She had so much fear or anxiety that I'm going to look at her and hate her. So there's just this feeling that I need to be strong. That even when I try to let it go, that it doesn't work. You know that feeling when you're driving somewhere dangerous? Like over a bridge or on a rainy night or snow or whatever. If your tires skid, your chest gets tight, like you're clenching to focus, like to get through the bad part, so that, and then as soon as you're done, it's like you release. My chest has felt like that for like 10 days. And there hasn't been a lot of release. I'm trying. My longest friend, my best friend from high school, called me today. And he didn't even really say anything about it. But it was in his voice. Just the way he just made it clear that, I'm here. Outricked me. So as Malcolm Reynolds said, here's us standing on the rickety edge. Oh. Just trying to do it. Just trying to go through it, trying to be faithful and trying to be encouraging. And one of my favorite people from my church is an elderly man named Mr. James. He's the freaking coolest. He's been sick for a long time. And right before Danielle went to the hospital, Mr. James came home to go to hospice. And I went to see him. And before he left, this dude's literally just told me it's going to be any day now. Looked me straight in the eye like I'm going to die any day now. He's like, I'm going to go. He knew it. And he still reached up and hugged me. And I held it together in there. But the minute we got outside, my daughters were there too. The minute we got outside, my oldest daughter and I just started bawling. And it felt so good to have enough to push me over to actually be able to feel everything. And today, Mr. James passed away. And I was driving by myself the same stretch of 95 when I got the news. And I just drove and cried and felt everything. So this is part 1. This is me being 100% transparent and honest about what I'm feeling. And one of the things about the millisecond is I'm not trying to tie everything into a neat bow of here's the happy Bible verse that makes it all better. It's just the hurt and the pain. And I know thousands and thousands of people are going through this. And I don't believe God's any less good. And I don't believe we're loved any less. And yeah, it sucks that it's happening to us. But I don't feel left alone in this either. I just really like my wife to come home. So if you made it this far, cheers. Thanks for listening. And maybe on the other side of where this goes, we'll revisit this. Thanks for being a part of this, and I'm not going to go through any of the other junk. Thanks.